Welcome back, Venturers. It's time for another discussion about VNs. I am Emma, and together with Tauros we bring the final installment of the book club reading of the title Geminism. Today not only will be full of spoilers, so warning to our listeners, but also our final thoughts about the title itself. Tauros, let's get started.
Yes, spoilers! Spoilers to everyone if you haven't seen it from the title or from our intro just now, but yes, we will be talking about Geminism entirely. And we've had a lot of thoughts about it along the way through our Readport journey, and in some sense, it's a little bit happy to finally reach the end, and also a little bit melancholic to reach the end of this journey together, MR. But yes, we'll be wrapping up our journey. So, MR, we finish this up with a final little epilogue that takes place after the events of Geminism, and it's a short little scene that focuses on Tsukishiro and Awasumi, right, MR?
Yeah, I was so excited to finally get some sort of focus, or in this case an extra scenario that is centering around Awasumi and Tsukishiro, and we got it. Honestly, I don't have that much bad to say about that specific short story of sorts or event. It was pretty interesting to finally see their perspective. And we have a slight glimpse into the flashback of the back with the Awasumi voice actor doing his iconic that he does in a lot of character that he's voicing. I was like, yes, I recognize exactly you as a voice actor, as well as how many times I've heard you do that laugh.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
Yeah, we got to see a little bit of more history between the two of them. They also spelled out exactly that they've both been locked in, what was it, the happiness, eternal, what is it called again? Joint happiness.
Joint happiness.
Thank you, yes, of their own.
In their case, they like the cynical approach of eternal unhappiness. That's how they coined it by the end.
Mm-hmm. Many, many rounds extending through many, many years. And, again, it got spelled out for us directly that for this time, they found another pair of identical twins and made them duke it out as proxies. For just my own little review of this last epilogue section, I mean, it was nice getting a few things spelled out, but for the most part, we could figure the general outline of everything they were talking about. That they were both alive for a long time, that they're both competing in their own joint happiness, that they'll both continue duking it out for each other's body parts in the future. And I mean, it was nice to get confirmation, and it was nice to see the two of them bantering as usual, but despite the focus, despite the, cool attention to detail, like you mentioned, it didn't really conclude all that satisfying,
I agree. It is definitely not something I would consider a true end of sorts that have a nice send-off for the title itself. But I was content with the focus it gave to those two characters. And again, we mentioned spoilers many times, spoilers, and it was confirmed here explicitly that they are twins. So out of 6 characters, and 6 characters that had an effect of this title to such a degree they were granted sprites, and I mean by Kikyo, Shinku, so the twins from the titular series, they are featured on the logo. Now we have Awasumi and Tsukishiro, and mother and uncle. Out of all 6 of the characters, all 3 pairs form twin siblings, which was, I mean,
what? That's contrived?
So predictable. Sorry?
What, are you about to say that's contrived?
Yeah. That's probably the best word to say it.
You see, I don't think so. I mean, if this were any other title, and if this were kind of some kind of side plot, and it's just like, oh, another pair of twins that we reveal at the last second, it's like, okay, well, yes, that would be kind of a cop-out. But, for Geminism, that works. That their whole themes of identities and, I guess, the pair of Tsukishiro and Awasumi trying to find proxies for themselves to fight in their own joint happiness. I think there's a lot of themes and connections that could be made to justify it. My bigger problem is that a lot of these, story beats didn't pay off. So, in a sense, yeah, it just kind of felt like reusing the same material. But I mean, there was a lot of potential. Yeah.
If anything, my disappointment is less about revealing that they are twins as well. More so, in the entire VN, all we get is twins on every level. From the Kikyo in Shinku, it's interesting how that becomes generational. Because, and again, spoilers, their mother and uncle are their parents, which are themselves twin siblings, which perpetuates that problem. We could now extrapolate, maybe this is going on in that family for generations in the past. We don't know, fine. But I don't know, it felt super weird to have the same thing repeated. For the Awasumi and Tsukishiro, I give them a pass for that revelation because I felt like they burrowed enough uncertainty into you, thinking, are they connected like that? Aren't throughout the entire VM? That it was, that was actually cool reveal, other than it leaves no other characters than twins in a title called Geminism. Like, what's next? I'll read a title called Tsundere with all Tsunderes. Like,
those would be honest.
That felt weird. Okay, fair
maybe
enough.
Up front, you'd have to give him credit.
But to be honest, credit what credit is due, and what I was building up when speaking about that aren't they with Awasumi Tsukishiro, for the last reveal, they shown that yes, they have the same face. It just so happened that Tsukishiro is one of those flamboyant people who put contacts in his eyes, so that's why he looks different at a glance. But no, they are identical twins. Like, okay, fine, you got me there, game. I didn't think about the eye contacts. In the final screenshot that we have in the gallery scrolling in the background, we can see once the eye contacts are removed and they share a light to their cigars, they have exactly the same eyes, 1-to-1. And the unobfuscated part of the face with bandages is exactly the same. I'm like, okay, fine. You know what? You got me there, game. That was cool. That was cool detail. I like cool details like that.
Oh, yeah. Now, although the epilogue covers a lot about those two, it also mentions I'm not quite sure how to say it, the lasting individual that's composed of some parts of Kikyo and Shinku, but seems to be neither of them at the same time. It's very much left a question mark of who survived this joint happiness game between Shinku and Kikyo. I did not like that at all. I feel like, with this sort of story, when you've had all of the suffering and all the strife, and when you finally have a character journey, you gotta cap it off with some sort of happy ending. Maybe not like a fairy tale, everything is perfect kind of ending, but at least some sort of content, fulfilling, encouraging ending to just leave things on a good note for the reader and for the characters too. And I felt like it really shaped up that way. Kikyo finally won. She overcame her passive nature from the beginning. Shinku also went on her own journey and, arguably, passed on with no regrets. But then we get to the end, and now this final person is some sort of mind-wiped new individual who is neither Kikyo nor Shinku or something else. And now it's like, okay, well, now I have no clue who this person is. I have no clue what her goals are, or, what the resolution of any of this whole, twins, character bonding and all their personality and growth involved. It kind of just all went down the drain. And that's not the kind of ending I want to end a VN with. I want to know that, the events in this story meant something, that these characters are going to move on with their own lives in their own ways, and instead, now it's just a woman on a train going somewhere, and it kind of feels like everything just got erased. And that felt very unsatisfying. I thought there'd be more to than that. Some kind of ending for them.
My thoughts on, let's call it, the entity that became at the end are, I feel like this cheapens the theme of this VN about sacrifice. In each of those pair of twins, for whatever circumstances they found themselves in, you can find sacrifice. In terms of the mother and uncle, part of the drama and part of the story is how mother sacrificed her future to take care of her daughters. And that took a toll on her immensely up until the boiling point when she confronted the uncle and they fought to the death, right? In terms of Kikyo and Shinku, the sacrifice stems from the final, let's call it solution, or maybe idea that Shinku had, that she will sacrifice herself so Kikyo will have happiness and she will become the normal girl. You mentioned a couple of times before how that's the main focus and main goal of what they want to achieve, right? And for the extra scenario, the sacrifice is also brought up. They two discuss, looking through what transpired during this proxy war, would Awasumi sacrifice himself for Tsukishiro or the reverse? That was the question posed. Mm-hmm. And Awasumi said, no way, I won't sacrifice myself for your happiness because this requires my happiness to be discarded. So the theme of sacrifice is ever present in all those pairs of siblings. And in case of the entity, probably the most important sibling there is in this title, it just got cheapened, because if you found a convenient ending in which, yes, someone won, someone didn't, but just before, or maybe just in that moment of victory, there has transpired some wild, mind-melding magic of personality that make it so they are both inside the same shot. Like, what is this now? I already had a lot of how to say it, suspense of disbelief to believe that there can be twins in two separate bodies built from the same amount of parts that combined create one person and a spare head, I guess. You could say that. So there's a lot of suspense of disbelief there. Why you put on top of that, like, yeah, but at the end they mind melded, and who knows what the entity is. Like, that cheapens it, in my opinion. If I'm allowed to speculate, I feel like a better ending would be if they stuck to, yes, Kikyo won. That is Kikyo who will remember forever the sacrifice Shinku did to her. Like, wouldn't that make for a more satisfying conclusion? Maybe not perfect, maybe not super happy ending, everybody lives kind of deal, but a bit of a somber but good one.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And it's not like this would be a difficult ending to write. You just let everything play out to its natural conclusion. It's just, you would have a scene of like Kyo and Awasumi being all lovey-dovey happy together, Although, now that we have this epilogue, I don't know how true that really was about Awasumi's point of view about the romance. So maybe there'd have to be something to resolve that. But I mean, you have Kikyo, living a normal life, excited to finally be a normal girl and face out into the world. And then you could have this fun little dialogue between Awasumi and Tsukishiro about finding their next round of their eternal unhappiness and all of that. And it's just classic. Just have this camera pan up to the setting sun, and then with some heartfelt words from the spirit of Shinku or something. I don't know. You get all sentimental and sappy about that. And that would have been a very satisfying end that tied into all of Geminism's major points. Like, that wouldn't have been difficult, right? I would have been very satisfied with something like that. It would have felt like an ending. Yeah. And I mean, that's just part of my bigger problems with Geminism as a whole. A lot of its moments are just missing the mark. They're not getting the emotional impact that they should. Like, the most obvious one is, round 4, when they all meet up at the cafe. Finally, we get a chance for everyone to talk together. And now this is like our only moment where we can get any progress towards this whole, identical twin, this weird situation, all of the emotional tension, and it falls apart as they're talking about naughty stuff. There's a point to it. Like I said, that emotional tension is there. But gosh, this cafe scene should have been so much more impactful. And yet, instead, it just kind of turns into talking and awkward energy, and it feels so disappointing, man.
You know what's so funny to me about the cafe scene? Is it feels like, and maybe that's true, but it feels like we every single week talk about it non-stop, and the same talking points persist. Like, why was it this better? It had all the potential. Everything has aligned. Please make it good. And the authors of Geminism, no, I refuse.
Just like with the aquarium scene in Kikyo's route. Exactly. It should have been such an emotional moment. It was on the right track of finally building up some idea of romance between Kikyo and Awasumi. And then it got all weird with the H stuff, and it's like, oh my god, what are we doing? Why are we shooting ourselves in the foot every time, man?
Someone making that scene looked at their watch and said, oh wait, we haven't had an H scene in a while. Let's put it now. Let's ruin this scene. Like, so, why?
Yeah. That's Geminism. Just a lot of wasted potential. Cool premise. It had the moments. It had the moments for those emotional growths. And it tried to pull it off and would kneecap itself. And gosh.
Preparing for this episode, I was thinking myself what to talk about, what points to make, what themes it tried to present, and mostly failed at it, especially at the conclusion, but throughout the entire thing. And I kept thinking, from my recent reads, I have a two polar opposites, okay? I have been very excited to finally talk on the report about the Galzo Island. A good title, but with some serious annoyances and problems. And with Geminism, I am excited to finally move on because it had good moments or maybe potential, but otherwise left much to be desired. But honestly, I don't want to be all downwards and speaking about little things, because I feel like it had potential. And this is probably my question to you. What would be, if you had to name it, your favorite moment?
My favorite moment in all of Geminism. I think I would have to pick that pivotal scene in Shinku's route where she has the flashback of mother and uncle arguing. just beyond the door.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, it's very intense, and it has major repercussions on the story and on Shinku's poor emotional state. It's one of the few scenes in Geminism that lives up to its fullest potential. It builds up, the tension in the flashbacks between their situation, between mother and uncle. The scene itself, it hits hard. It's such a gut punch to all of it. And, it's such a pivotal moment in their history, too. And, it's kind of what leads to them being on death's door when they get found and recruited for this joint happiness game. It leads to so much, and I mean, it has such a massive impact on everyone involved. And, the scene itself, it was, almost physically painful to read, just as an observer. So, I mean, it's just all in all, this was an example of what this VN could be if it was firing on all cylinders. And I was like, this was such a good moment. It was so sweet, and it kind of hurt because it was like, this is what could be possible. And I was like,
And I feel like that scene in particular answers a lot of questions. For example, the person who had a gun-ho approach of fighting, Shinku was motivated, let's fight, etc. on the start, will change her stance since that scene. Because now she remembers the past. And prior to that, she didn't. And that altered her inner thoughts. And when we read Kick You Out, we had no context what happened. That made her flip so hard from her stance. And now we finally do. I would even say the scene that you mentioned, the fight and confrontation between mother and uncle, builds up this scene in a parallel scenario. So the one we read in Kikyo, when we last final reveal that they were conjoined twins and they were in a desperate situation, but it hadn't yet divulged in what was happening behind the scenes with mother and uncle. And for those who didn't even consider that a possibility of conjoined twins, that was super good reveal in that moment, how desperate that past looked like. So in Shinku route, when you reach the same point, given the fact that there is an enforced route already, you already know that. So it doesn't hit the same way. But then, as you pointed out, they left out another gut punch, I would say even stronger than the original one, to show what is really happening. Like, that was smart. That was really smart.
Yeah, it was really cool. Really appreciated. But what about you, MR? What's your favorite moment in Geminism?
I mean, as you could probably hear me explain the thing you just mentioned, I really like that one. But I honestly, I want to dedicate something else than just that one. However much it pains me, it might actually be the aquarium.
Oh.
Because this is a culmination. Okay, I'm struggling because aquarium is that one, but also the scene after the cafe from Kikyu's perspective is also really nice.
Oh, you're taking two answers.
Let me explain.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not yet decided because, as we stated before, both of those events had a lot of potential. They had been ruined in a pivotal moment, but the aftermath of the cafe scene, and now again, spoilers, I'll describe what is happening. Kikyu just couldn't take it, right? She just didn't like the direction it's happening, that Shinku doesn't have any strive. Unlike Kikyu, Shinku is living in luxury, no problems whatsoever, and she is presumed to doing the naughty part with Tsukishiro. And Kikyu just couldn't take it. She ran away from it all. In frustration, she goes back to her home with Awasumi, and in rage, she's trashing the things she has. And she was about to smash the gift she got from Awasumi. But she just couldn't do it because she understood, given their situation, that was a very meaningful gift that, again, I'll say it, Awasumi had to sacrifice a lot to give her because they don't have a lot. But he decided that her, be it mood, maybe her motivation, needed that kind of gift and that will give her sentimental value. And she, in the moment of clarity, despite her rage and disappointment in her sister's situation compared to her, she said, no, this is, even if I'm filled with righteous fury, I cannot do that. I cannot break the one thing that matters, that has sentimental value. And I felt like, dang, that's a powerful message.
Mm-hmm. And even though it was just some cheap plastic trinket they got from the store, it's still put pressure on their finances for them to purchase it, and it was purely for Kikyo's happiness. And even, like you said, in that moment of rage about it, she still held herself at the last moment from being destructive and breaking it, because she realized, well, not realized, she recognized, again, how much it mattered. And she showed a lot of maturity there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I remember this scene to this moment so clearly, because the absolute value of that gift doesn't matter, but the relative value of it does. It's sentimental value that it holds, and the sacrifice they had to do to get that.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
I feel like this wins out slightly the aquarium for me, although the aquarium was cool until the certain moment we don't talk about.
Yeah. MR, who is your favorite character in Geminism?
That was for me.
Nice. And,
if
you haven't quite made it clear enough yet, why is it?
Because I feel like, I mean, the funny answer would be, oh yeah, he's a Kudera, so that's cool, right? That's the funny answer, obviously. But the way, exactly. But the way he approaches this ordeal, the situation he is found in, that kind of mysterious aura of what is happening, why he's all bandaged, is also very intriguing. But his principled nature and the way he treats Kikyo is really, how can I say, it's really
endearing.
In a way, yes.
Annoying.
Upstanding, maybe. Something really righteous. Like, he has a lot of those qualities. You can say, damn, I wish I had Awasumi's composure in a situation he gets thrown into. Mm-hmm. For example, there was a moment that he composes himself to go out, despite the stares of random passerbys that he will get, and despite the aura he will enact upon Kikyo, he decides, you know what, she needs a bit of a fresh air and a fresh experience. Let's go on a somewhat of a date. And I'm not saying about the aquarium, I'm saying about when they were window shopping. That was the word. The window shopping, all those things. And he said, yeah, this is necessary for her. I'll do that, even if I am subjected to ridicule. Like, pain, that's admirable. Oh, that's what's the word. I was admirable quality. Pain. Mm-hmm. So he had some weird quirks and I'll say negatives, or maybe mysterious elements to him, how detached he was when Kikyo was in danger and wanted to count on him, but he did not a white knight or anything like that came to her defense. So that was kind of weird, and you weren't quite sure why is that. But other than that, he was a really principled person that was very stoic and composed, despite being fish out of water in a lot of elements. Because unlike Tsukishiro, in a lot of situations and with a lot of technology, he was an outcast. He just didn't understood, but he applied himself the most he could, the best he could. And like, damn, that's admirable. Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
What about you, Taurus?
I think I would have to give the edge to Kikyo. She, as designated main character, she's got the most, I guess you could say, endearing character arc. She's the one, the innocent, helpless character caught up in a whole bunch of violence that she doesn't understand. And she spends the first few rounds kind of, dreaming with her head in the clouds of being a normal girl and enjoying all the shopping and all of that. But we do get to see that growth of her taking her future for herself, maturing and overcoming her sister. And I really wish there was a better ending that got to, send her off with a smile, sort of thing. But I mean, yeah, I am the kind of person who tends to like romanceable heroines and moeges, more so for the plot instead of just, the character archetype and their own behaviors. I am a big sucker for anyone who's got any sort of journey from beginning to end. And Kikyo represented that the most in Geminism.
That's true, especially since, as you mentioned, she started a bit airheaded, not really that with any convictions of whether or not to participate or something like that. And over time, you saw her grow as a person. And despite her situation, despite where she was found in, she accepted that and tried her best to get out of it. The fact that she willingly herself decided to help Awasumi with his job, to earn more money, to get a better situation than they are in, speaks volumes.
Now, as we wrap things up, do you have any final thoughts about this book club as a whole? It's been a pretty new experience for you and I. This is the first time we've ever read a VN, side by side along the same points, and we got to talk about our experiences along the way and share our thoughts along the way too. What are your final thoughts about how this all turned out?
We floated the idea of some sort of simultaneous or synchronized reading for some time now. And with Geminism, we felt like, for the first time we have a title we both have on our radar. We both were done with our previous reads. Let's take it for a spin. And you know what? That was actually pretty cool. I really enjoyed the fact that we had a separated read in addition to anything else that we've read in that time, that we had a plan to tackle. We met every single week to discuss what has transpired so far and then continue on with that. I felt like that was a very cool experience to have to some degree, clear stopping point and milestones, but importantly, we both respected them. The moment we decided, okay, this is a stopping point, stop. Then we sit down, talk about it, analyze it, and maybe throw some, throw some things that we think will happen. Some prophecy of, I think that they are twins, conjoined twins, etc. Or I was saying, oh my God, this is so uncannily how they put the face of Awasumi next to Tsukishiro. There has to be some explanation for that. And it was. So I really like that experience. I really like the series, and I do hope we get to find a title that we repeat this book club for.
It was pretty funny. I noticed is that while we were talking about our thoughts along the way, is that you would generally be pretty forward thinking of predicting some of the twists that were going to happen and be like, trying to call out some of these relationships and some of these plot developments before they happened. And I mean, you got most of them, actually. And for me, instead, I was more looking at the past and more judging the story based on its story beats and how it was shaping up, and the themes and the main ideas that were being implemented in the past. It was very fun. It was really cool getting to, talk about this with someone who had just a naturally different perspective on a story while we're going through it. It was, I guess in a word, it was very enriching. So yeah, like you mentioned, I'd be excited.
Agree.
Yeah, I'd be excited to try something like this again. And more than anything, I hope that the readers not readers. I'm too used to thinking about visual novel readers. But no, we are here on a podcast. And so I hope all of our listeners enjoyed this as well. I know this is the sort of thing that can kind of be a lot of an ask for anyone who may want to follow along, because you would have to follow along a visual novel that you may or may not have ever read before while listening to a whole bunch of spoilers. So I hope it was worth it. I'd be interested in hearing everyone else's thoughts of maybe the things you liked or didn't like, or things we could improve on. What do you think, Amar?
Exactly. I completely agree. Now, I want to go back slightly to the point you made about future past, because I similarly was surprised how well prepared you were to discuss the themes, not having the full grasp of the story, which I rarely do. So you tended to look back into what has transpired up till this point and what kind of theme that is, while I tend to delay that until I have a clearer picture of the entire thing. This is why, for example, I did not bring, I don't believe I brought the theme of sacrifice up until I had everything and thought really hard about, okay, how that all fits together. So that you know what? That's a very interesting observation you made, that it opened my eyes to how differently we approach a title. And I don't want to use the word analyze, but maybe this fits. As for the viewers and our listeners to the podcast, I hope they had fun. And hard to say if how that would resonate to those of you listeners who read at the same pace we did, to those that listened without any knowledge of this title whatsoever, or those who were, for example, a bit ahead when listening to our titles. I wonder how those perspectives differ. I would love to read that in the comments. So please, if you have any feedbacks to say, do so. I think uniquely, Book Club has granted us an opportunity to talk about very deep spoilers on a common basis, which we don't often do, by the way. That was a very unique experience when having this series. And I wonder what's the final opinion and feedback from our listeners and of you that we've finally had some leeway and freedom to talk as we wanted, with obviously spoiler disclaimer at the start of those episodes. Additionally, and I'll let you speak in a moment. Additionally, if anybody from our listeners have a suggestion that you think would make for an interesting material for book club, please leave them in the comment. We'll at least consider them.
At least consider them? Oh, man, you make it sound like we're just gonna kick it off right away. Be gone. To the curb.
It really helped that Geminism was a linear progression VM without any choices whatsoever. And they were clickable options, but they weren't really choices. They were meaningless choices, all of them. So if the proposition has a flowchart structure with changing story, it would be very, very hard. We'll at least consider it and maybe try to fit in. I can't guarantee, and I'm scared from asking about suggestion that will guarantee reading, because that is scary, okay? So that's why at least I will consider that and look into it. Sorry if that sounded nasty, okay?
Yes. All right. But yep, I guess this will wrap up our first ever readport of a title together. Thank you everyone again so much for listening along the way, or if you just caught up to the bits you really liked. No matter what, thank you very much, and we're interested in hearing more from you as well.
Thank you very much, and venture out.
Venture out.